We have rosters, baby. Woohoo! We got rosters. Spring game 2025. We've seen who got picked, what the deal is. We're going to get to that. Very interesting how these guys drafted this thing for tonight's spring game. Terry Ford halftime show. David Dare is here. We're going to roll this baby up until 3 o'clock. Elijah Campbell then we'll be in studio to run the show. Jay Phillips will be calling as he's walking around Heritage during today's round. So I guess we'll see what's up with Jay Phillips at the Heritage. Elijah also will be running the show from here for the post-game show. Now we're only going till 5 today on the post-game show because we have the spring game. We got to get Elijah Campbell over to get him properly situated on the sideline because he's a play caller. He's just not some media schlub like the rest of us. Our man is calling a play. So we have to get him prepared on the sideline and ready to rock and roll. So at 5 o'clock, we'll do what we do a lot at 6, which is the best of the game. We'll get you a little extra taste of what's going on today here on the game up until 6:30. Then it's pregame for the South Carolina spring game 2025. Like I said, we'll get to the rosters here shortly. It's kind of cool how they're setting it up. Should be fun. And look, like we said the whole time for all this is, a spring game is what it is now. Is it vanilla? Sure. Are you going to see something that is going to translate to what you're going to see during the season? Maybe, maybe not. But it's just, to me, honestly, and the more I've thought about this and where we're at with spring games, it's just cool that the fans can kind of have a spring football celebration, right? We haven't seen South Carolina play since the Citrus Bowl in December. It's been a few months. We're jonesing for football. The basketball seasons are over. The baseball season, hey, big win. Nice W last night for Paul Mainieri and his crew. But the baseball season has not been what we hoped it would be. The football team has a ton of expectation. And it's just fun to go out and just watch these guys slam into each other for a couple hours, right? We know some of the most important pieces aren't going to play much. That's okay. Get a chance to glimpse at these freshman receivers, some of these transfer portal guys that have come in that we hope will pop like a Kyle Kennard and a Demetrius Knight did last year. And it's just good. It's just good to get together for football. Whether it's a tailgate lot, you get to get your spring drink on in the tailgate lot, practice your tailgating, and then we could just get together for football. I mean, to me, that's what the spring game is. We're all getting together in April, just kind of a mid-off-season checkup, hang out, and do some football. And then it's see you for Virginia Tech. Because then we'll have, roughly almost a little bit over 4 months for the kickoff against the Hokies. That's, to me, what the spring game is now. It's not a game. In the words of Allen Iverson, we're talking about practice. Not a game. It's not a real game. It's going to be very vanilla. The biggest thing you hope for is no one gets hurt, obviously. But it's just a chance to get together for football, and that's really what we dig, right? We dig football. And I know there's some people that, look, some people in life just complain to complain, right? It's who they are. They like to complain. They like to whine and moan. They're that person. They complain about anything. They'd win the lottery and complain how they're getting paid. Yeah, you're going to pay me, what? You're going to pay me like that? I want it like this. You're going to pay, well, but sir, it's $70 million. Yeah, but I want it like this, not that. Hey, what's up with you people? People just always, there's that percentage of folks that always want to whine about something. They're never happy. And I feel like every year I've been here, this is spring game number 4 for me. It feels like every year, whenever this thing is set up, someone complains about the date. Oh, Oh, the heritage. Oh, this. Oh, that. Oh, you can't play it then. You can't play that. I think the climate we're in, and not to say you should just settle for things in life just because you want a crumb of something, but the way this thing's going around the country with the Matt Rule syndrome. Oh, yes, we might see our players on the spring game and try to poach them in the portal. The nonsense that Matt Rule has been throwing up from the face that other coaches have run with. If you like the spring game, you got to feel lucky that there's even a spring game here at South Carolina. Because, Shane Beamer could have gone along with the wackiness of Matt Rule. But Shane said, no, we're going to play a spring game. We play it for the fans. We play it for recruits. And we play it just to get out to play football. And I agree with all that. It's phenomenal Shane thinks that way. And Shane's going to have to add to it. And we play the spring game so Elijah Campbell can call a play. But I just feel like I'm just happy there's a spring game. I'm happy we can all congregate and just talk about football that's going to be on the field, no matter how vanilla it is, no matter how little we see the starters, no matter what. We get a chance for a little taste of some football in mid-ish April. That's just me. I mean, you can believe however you want, think however you want. You can be upset when the day the game's being played, the date it's being played, that, it's really vanilla and it's just whatever. Whatever you want to complain about, feel free. I'm not going to tell you how to think. Usually when people tell me how to think, I do the opposite, to be quite honest. But for me, it's like and I think Tyler hit it the best. It's a celebration of football. That's really what it is at this time of year. So it's going to be a lot of fun just to be able to it's almost like us as fans getting our, spring game process on the tailgating or going to the game or being able to watch the game and if we go and things of that nature, listen to the game, whatever. It's almost like practice for us since there obviously is no preseason games in college football, which I hope at some point there is a preseason game. See, to me, I hope that's where this goes, that you get to play a preseason game against another program or at least have some kind of joint practice that fans can come see with another program. See, to me, that's, I hope, where this thing ends up. Will it? We'll see. I'm never confident because it makes sense and it's logical, and that's something that college athletics isn't. It's not logical, and a lot of times it makes no sense. So we'll see. But again, 6:30, our coverage gets started tonight with the pregame show. 7:30, Chris Miller from Learfield, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark from Gamecock Central will bring the broadcast, and then we'll roll a post game as well for the 2025 spring game. And our dude, Elijah Campbell, will be calling the first play for the Black. Whether it's the first play of the game or the first play for a Black when they have possession, depends on who wins the coin toss. But everybody, Elijah Campbell calling a play, and I've seen the play. It's very cool. And we were, I've been saying, Elijah and I were talking about it last night, and then we were yapping about it with Wes and Chris and Tyler. This play has to be the extreme on one end or the other. Either it's a phenomenal success and it's a big play, maybe even goes for a touchdown, or it's an unbelievable disaster. It's got to be one of the two extremes for the ultimate payoff, right? Because either we can give Elijah mad props for a phenomenally drawn-up play that was executed to perfection, or we can dog him mercilessly about the train wreck that he set up. One of the two. All right, if you haven't heard yet, the Garnet team, the Black team hoarded the quarterbacks. Black team took Lennar Sellers, Aaron Nolan, Cutter Woods. Again, Lennar Sellers probably not going to get a lot of run. But then you get to see Aaron Nolan and Cutter Woods, which I think is interesting in a scenario here in the spring game. You get to watch, Aaron Nolan, who heard a lot of great things as a high school quarterback. He was a big-time recruit at Ohio State, and now here he is at South Carolina. And then you get to see Cutter Woods, who might not have the fanfare that Aaron Nolan, but a lot of people have raved about Cutter Woods. The Garnet team has Dante Reno, Jimmy Francis, and Luke Doty. Yes, Luke Doty will quarterback in the spring game in some way, shape, or form. And, the Garnet with Reno, Francis, and Doty, Dante Reno, this is where it's really interesting to me for Dante Reno. Dante Reno is in a spot, right? Remember when Dante Reno was recruited? I mean, he couldn't wait to get to South Carolina to play for the Gamecocks. He was like the recruiting coordinator for Shane with his high school class. Dante Reno all in as a Gamecock. And Dante Reno last year, we saw him in the spring game. And now Dante Reno has been in the program an extra year. But is Dante Reno the second-string quarterback? Is he the backup? Is he a guy that could be a possible future starter if Lenore Sellers has a great year and rolls it off to the NFL? Or has Aaron Nolan come in and moved ahead of Dante Reno? At this point, there's still a long way to go. You still have a summer camp. But Dante Reno is going to get plenty of chance to shine tonight. He's going to get his opportunities, is my guess. Lenore Sellers isn't going to play much. Aaron Nolan will get his chances, as will Cutter Woods. Jimmy Francis, Luke Doty obviously will also play in this game, but Dante Reno really has a chance to show something tonight in the competition that he's in phase one of. Now, why this is important is, depending on which direction all this goes, if Dante Reno thinks he's been passed by Aaron Nolan, or he believes that is true or has been told that's true, Dante Reno might roll off to the portal. Just saying. Just saying. You never know, but that's why tonight's important. Maybe Dante Reno has a phenomenal spring game, and he eventually wins the backup gig. Or if Dante Reno, after the spring game, has the meeting with Shane and the coaches and feels like he's lost momentum and he's the 3, he might head off to the portal. So just a little interesting mini subplot here for the quarterbacks who are all trying to win the number 2 gig behind Lenore Sellers. All right, halftime show. Terry Ford kind of rolling it solo. David Ayers obviously here punching up the buttons. Tyler worked this morning, and then Tyler did 9 to noon. So as much as Tyler would love to work on 3 shows in one day, we kicked him out. Up next, a really nice victory last night for South Carolina over Ole Miss. A pitcher going the distance. It's like seeing Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. We'll talk about a nice night on the diamond for the Gamecocks, and could it mean anything more than a nice night? That's next on the halftime show, up until 3 here on The Game. How about that, Brandon Stone? Excellent work by the South Carolina starter. Going the distance. Stone throwing 9 innings of 6 hit ball, only gave up 2 runs, didn't walk anyone. So it was walks and hits combined, only 6 in this baseball game given up by Brandon Stone. Only threw the economy of pitches 86 pitches. Faced 31 batters. Didn't hit anybody. Only, like I said, a total of 6 base runners. Brandon Stone was phenomenal. That game, what did that game last? Like 40 minutes? It was unreal. Ole Miss scored a single run in the 3rd and the 6th, and that was it. That was it. Just an excellent outing by Brandon Stone in every way, shape, or form. Throwing zeros in the last 3 innings. Ole Miss in the 7th went down in order. In the 8th, had a base runner on a strikeout. And then in the 9th, went down in order. So Brandon Stone pretty much controlled this thing after the Sanford homer with 1 out in the 6th. The next, 11 hitters. And it would have been clean if it wasn't for the getting on base after the strikeout with the wild pitch. So just what an outing when South Carolina really needed an outing like that. So Brandon Stone really did some work. And a pitcher going the distance, throwing a complete game in today's baseball. I mean, seriously, like I was kidding with Dave, it's like seeing the Loch Ness Monster walking through your neighborhood or crawling through your neighborhood. You never see complete games like that, or very rarely do you see them. By the way, looking it up really quick, the last time a South Carolina pitcher threw a 9-inning complete game was Brett Carey against Kentucky in 2021. That's how long it's been. So Brandon Stone, thumbs up, my man. All right, let's get some sound here. Here's Paul Mainieri, first of all, talking about a phenomenal performance by Brandon Stone. Cut 11, Dave.
I wish I knew he was going to go 9. I was trying to recall. Of course, I've been gone for 3 years, but I'm trying to remember the last time I had a pitcher go 9 innings in a game. I mean, you don't see that very often, but he's so efficient. I think he only threw like 25 pitches out of the strike zone tonight. Most of his pitches were strikes. I want to say he had, I don't know if it was 70 or so strikes, 65 strikes, something like that.
61 strikes.
Yeah, 61 strikes. And so, when a guy is ahead of the hitters constantly, and, the only time he got hurt was when he threw off-speed pitches and left them up in the zone. Those were the only balls of the 2 home runs, and I'm not sure he gave up a hit on his fastball, to be honest with you. His fastball was sinking, but it was in the strike zone the whole night, and it had good velocity, and listen, where we positioned the guy was very important, because when Brandon pitches, he's not going to strike out a ton of batters. But he's going to make him pound it into the ground, and sometimes they'll hit it a little bit hard, but into the ground. And if you're in the right positions, then we got a chance to make the plays, and the guys all made the plays tonight. That first batter of the 9th inning was a little uncharacteristic. I think. I wish Scope would have come and got that ball, because it went straight down off the bat. But I think it kind of surprised him coming from a left-handed hitter that way, and it just kind of took a little tricky hop on him. But, I felt that Furness was I was really tempted to go with Crowther against Furness, because in his splits, he's much better against right-handed pitching than left-handed pitching. But if I'd have gone to Crowther, I didn't know if Mike would have brought one of his right-handed hitters off the bench. So I liked the matchup of Brandon against Furness more than I liked the Crowther against a right-handed hitter. And I knew he had hit into 3 double plays this year. So again, if we had him positioned correctly, which I think we did, with Jordan a little bit more in the hole there. And I knew that Furness was not a great runner, that we had a chance to turn another double play, and sure enough, we got it. And that was a huge lift for us to get that double play in the ninth inning.
Yeah, double play in the ninth was big. Brandon Stone, and you heard Paul Mainieri talking about his fastball had some sink to it. And well, Brandon Stone's never going to wow you with velocity. You know, Coach Mainieri talked about that, yesterday. And it's kind of ironic that Coach Mainieri on Carolina calls, Wednesday night, was talking about like a Brandon Stone for an example. He's a guy, he doesn't throw really hard. And in a perfect world, you have some starting pitchers, some power guys, and some more higher velocity type dudes as starters. That next level guy, the one maybe a Brandon Stone, you can ask to be in the role that fits him more. And Paul Mainieri's been asking maybe Brandon Stone to do too much this year just because of the situation that South Carolina's in with their starting pitching and their bullpen because of injuries or ineffectiveness, right? So what Brandon Stone did last night, maybe Brandon Stone heard what Coach Mainieri said, "Oh, yeah, I'll show you there, bub." And Brandon Stone went out. Again, the fastball had sink. His command was good. It had sink in the zone. The couple of home runs, and Paul Mainieri just yipped about that, were like breaking balls that like just hung up high in the zone to where, a couple hitters could barrel them up and knock them out of the park. But what Brandon Stone did was phenomenal. Just phenomenal. Let's get one more, Dave. Cut 10. Paul Mainieri talking about a much-needed W last night in an SEC game against a ranked opponent, Ole Miss.
Well, goes without saying that was a great win for us tonight, badly needed, and just so proud of the guys for the way that they've kept their chins up and kept battling hard. I get a lot of questions sometimes how you keep guys going, and you just got to keep going forward. You just keep trudging forward. Obviously, the key to the game was this big fella sitting next to me. He was in complete command tonight, and I've told you this many times that anybody that thinks pitching is 90% of the game is largely underestimating its importance. He completely dominated the game today, gave his team a chance. We got a couple of big hits, and played great defense, and it was a wonderful win for us.
In 9 innings, Brandon Stone threw 25 balls. That's it, 25 pitches out of the strike zone. 61 strikes. Massively in command. All right, next, just in case you just woke up, and you know about this, but just in case you just woke up, why don't we get this Nico story, the perspective from Knoxville. Folks who cover this day in and day out and have a lot more insight than we do in Columbia, South Carolina. Will White from the Sports Animal in Knoxville is going to jump on here, our sister station in Knoxville, and kind of give us ground zero, so to speak, in all this Nico craziness. That's next here on the Halftime Show. David Ayer hanging out, steering the ship. This is Terry Ford. We're going till 3 on the game. All right, just in case you just woke up, maybe you're like, what's the latest on this Nico thing? Is he going to UCLA? Where's he at? Is he going to get like, $15.22 now that, his people have screwed up everything? How'd this happen in the first place? What's the deal? Well, I don't have any of those answers. So I'm going to my Nico expert, who absolutely has all the answers. Sitting there at the Sports Animal in Knoxville, our buddy Will White. Will, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Appreciate you having me on, Terry.
I always love having you. What the hell did you do to make Nico mad, Will? I'm blaming you.
So I will say this. It was not me, but all of this is about a leaked media story. All of it is. And I will say, Terry, there is no bigger butt whipping in the history of sports than Tennessee's PR versus Nico's team's PR right now. They are crushing it. And everyone's just like, a lot of what Tennessee's saying is not necessarily true, but everyone's repeating it as if it's gospel truth because Nico's side is so terrible at this. So there was an On3 report last Thursday from Pete Nakos, and it said Tennessee and Nico are looking for a contract ahead of the Orange and White game and ahead of the transfer portal opening. Nico loves Tennessee, but there's no word yet on whether he's going to enter the transfer portal. Nico's camp gets really upset by that and thinks that Tennessee's NIL collective leaked it out. At first, Tennessee believed Tennessee's NIL collective leaked it out as well. And the collective says, wasn't us. We didn't do it. And Nico's camp gets really angry. They dip. They just ghost. And depending on who you talk to, Tennessee's changed the story a few times. First, it was Nico never contacted them. And then it was, Nico, we'd already made a decision to move on by the time Nico contacted us. Here's the truth. Both sides decided to have a urinating contest about Nico no call, no showing during practice. I will tell you, he ain't the first guy who's done that at Tennessee. And one of those guys is definitely still on the team. And that guy did it to hold out for more money last fall. And he got the more money. It is what it is. Tennessee, Nico's team decided we're just not going to show up and we're going to transfer. Tennessee is awesome at PR. Have an agent who's not an agent. He's a former director of player personnel at Florida. They got pushed out of the recruiting business because of stupid practices. He's the guy that's running this thing, negotiating them. The kid's a great kid. His dad is the worst, and the guy who's representing him is the worst. Nico is the worst, too. But that's the dad's call kind of culturally in his culture. The dad makes that call, and he's chosen this guy, and now it's all a big old train wreck.
Will White from the Sports Animal in Knoxville giving us the insight on the train wreck that is the Nico situation at Tennessee. All right, I'll throw this. I think this is a duh statement, but you tell me. If Nico would have led the SEC in passing, he'd still be at Tennessee because this whole thing would have got worked out. But the idea that, he was okay, but he wasn't great, wasn't terrible, better in non-SEC games than SEC games. But if Nico would have been what everyone was hoping he would be last year, would he still be the quarterback at Tennessee?
No, I don't think it has to do with that. I really don't. Look, at the end of the day, the $4 million thing's just not true. That's just a lie. And it comes from a good source because I was told the same thing by someone who would know as well. And I know that guy's lying. And it's tough in these situations to find out who has an agenda, who doesn't. Nico is – it's about this. They had problems with the system. They wanted to make very RG3 Washington-like demands about who gets to – about we're going to run this type of system because it prepares us for the NFL. To me, Terry, that's much worse than asking for $4 million. And at the end of the day, $4 million is what's happening right now in NIL is everyone's asking for about that kind of money. There are 5 other quarterbacks making more than $3 million as starting quarterbacks in the SEC. I am told, including one that's on the campus of the school that you guys cover, so that he's making around in the 3.5 neighborhood. At Florida, making it in the 3.5 neighborhood, Arch 3.5 neighborhood. It's not an outlandish task for that much money. It wasn't about the money. It was about they wanted changes that, to me, Tennessee couldn't give, which is we want you to run more of a pro-style offense. We want you to get our guy ready for the NFL. And if you're Josh Heupel and you're Tennessee, you can't give them that because that's not what you do. Your job's to win games, and you did it last year. You made the college football playoff with a quarterback who wasn't ready last year that you let be a game manager. And the family's blaming the school for him having to be a game manager last year. The family's blaming the system that they knew they were committing to. And to me, that's what this comes down to at the end of the day. And they're going to take less money to go to a place that's going to give them a more pro-style system. Also, because this isn't the window, right? The winter window is when people go bring in new players. The spring window is when you fill a couple holes and then you re-up your guys so they don't go anywhere else. So for Nico, bad timing. For Tennessee, looking for a quarterback in the transfer portal, and they've been trying. Bad timing. And so Nico's going to take less to be surrounded by less, to go to a place that runs more of a pro-style system. And don't get me wrong, just because I believe that Nico's camp is telling the truth about that doesn't mean it's still not a bad decision. Sometimes people aren't liars, they're just stupid. And I think in this one, I think Nico's camp's just dumb. Like, you knew what you were getting into. When you signed here, you knew you were running a modified version of Art Briles' system. Now you want to go run a pro-style offense. That's not what you signed up for.
Will White with us from the Sports Animal in Knoxville in the halftime show. Terry Ford hanging with you here on the game, Columbia, Florence, and Myrtle Beach. Okay, so just to get it clear, Will, because first of all, fantastic information, my man. I appreciate you. All right, so everything you have heard as you have run it through your brain is this wasn't about $4 million like a lot of people are talking about. This was about Nico and his camp having control of what kind of offense Tennessee runs to put Nico in the best spot for the big payday of the NFL.
Yeah, well, mostly. Look, I will tell you, that is the only thing Nico's camp has been consistent about, is that it's not about the money, it's the system, and we wanted another wide receiver and another offensive line. They have not wavered on that from Friday morning when they weren't at practice through even this morning. That is what Nico's camp has said. It's hard for me to believe the human nature side of that, though, right? They don't strike me as the kind of people that are okay with Nico making $1 million less than the rest of the starting quarterbacks in the SEC, right? And Tennessee's not stupid. Tennessee has a really good collective. It's called Spire Sports Group. They're smart. They know that Nico's not going to play on a 3-year-old contract with the same money. No one does that, right? So it doesn't have anything to do with the money. It has to do with the dad is a huge pain in the butt. We were at a point where we're this close to the transfer portal without them signing a new deal or agreeing that they weren't going to enter the transfer portal. Tennessee has said Josh Heupel had 2 meetings with Nico asking him, are you going to transfer? Nico couldn't answer that. Part of that's because Nico's not the one making that call. Even though he's 20 years old now, his dad still makes that call for him. So I think this is about a urinating contest. I think this is about people drawing lines in the sand. I've said on our airwaves, this is more like a high school breakup than it is a dissolving of a business partnership. Part of that's because Nico's camp gets really, really bad advice. Part of that is because Tennessee agreed to some things they probably shouldn't have at first. And then you get to this point and you can't give those things or won't give those things. And you find yourself in this situation where Tennessee doesn't have a quarterback and Nico doesn't have a home. Although I think they get past the finish line with UCLA. But I will tell you, I've been told from some people outside of Knoxville in the NIL world, they went to Tulane, said, this is what we want. Tulane said, sure, no problem. And they came back and said, well, okay, we also want this. Sure, no problem. Then they came back and said, we also want this. And they said, okay, never mind. UCLA, this is what we want. Sure, no problem. Okay, now we also want this. And then now this is why it's stalled. And Nico hasn't signed with UCLA, at least as of right now.
I'll tell you this, Will. Nico's camp is really bad at urinating contests. Just saying, man. Just saying.
Yes, they're getting killed. They're getting absolutely killed. And then look, I don't care. Like I don't do like a fan show. Here's information. If they win 12 games next year, that's awesome. I like everybody over there. If they lose 12 games next year, that sucks. I like everybody over there, but it's just information. I mean, right? It's all clinical. But Tennessee is killing them in the PR battle, and to such an extent that everyone in America is repeating the things that we all locally know aren't true.
Wow.
And it's just kind of wild to see how far this has gone to the point where, like, every sports fan in America is against Nico. And he's not a bad kid. He just has a dummy for a dad.
Will White, Sports Animal in Knoxville. I got a couple minutes. Last thing for you, my man. All right, so where does Tennessee go from here? You got a 5-star kid, you got a 4-star kid. Both are very green. I know they've been portal hunting for a quarterback. Any kind of dirt on what direction in the portal they're going, who they might be chasing?
Not right now. I think they swung for some big fish. The tough part's this. Again, it's the wrong window to go get a quarterback. So everybody is kind of locked in, and the people who were at their current school, if they leave, it's only because they didn't win the starting job at their school. They tried to get the kid from TCU. He wouldn't enter the portal. They tried to get the kid from Illinois. He wouldn't enter the portal. Maybe they come back to them and offer them just insane money to get them to come here. I don't know if any of them will, but I'll be real. There aren't very many guys that are coming to play SEC football for the amount of money Nico was making. Like, that's just, I mean, like, I'll just tell you, there's a very lower level Big 12 school right now, I know, paying more than $1.5 million for their quarterback who didn't do a lot last year. The going rate's just more than this. So Tennessee's either going to have to give a good quarterback the money Nico asked for or close to it, or they're going to have to take someone who's a backup. If it were me, I would roll with a redshirt freshman, and I would just use the money that I have to surround him with better players, poach the guys I want out of the portal that I feel like fits culturally, and take my lumps next year, and you go 8-4 or 9-3, and you just kind of live with that for a season.
All right, again, I can squeeze another minute because the information's fantastic. So the last minute, basically, it's like, okay, like you said, it's a peeing contest, but also was it just like Tennessee got tired of the constant, we want this, we want this, we want this, not the money-based stuff, but just here's what we want our guy to be doing, and after a while, it's like, let's just move on to somebody else.
No, I don't believe Tennessee made the decision to move on. Like, that Tennessee says they did, but I do believe Tennessee would not give them what they want, if that makes sense. And then that's why now Tennessee is saying the tough part. Tennessee's given us 4 stories on this. One, it was Nico never contacted us, and it was Nico contacted us, but it wasn't until later in the day. And then it was Nico contacted us, but we had already decided to move on from him, and now we decided mutually to part ways. I think that Nico didn't show up to practice because his dad told him to because they were going to transfer. I know he told his teammates that was what was happening. And then Tennessee made the decision, quotation fingers, to move on from Nico after Nico's camp had already decided not to show up. So, I don't believe, but I do believe Tennessee made the right call. You could not give Nico's camp what they wanted. It's better for Tennessee to not be in the business, not of Nico Iamaleava, but of his father, Nick Iamaleava. It's better for Tennessee to not be in the Nick Iamaleava business. For UCLA, it makes sense. They are so far behind the 8 ball when it comes to the Big Ten that it makes sense for them to swing big on a guy who has every trait at NFL you'd want out of an NFL quarterback. Yes, the dad's a pain in the butt, but they had a relationship with the recruitment of Nico's younger brother. They can probably hold their nose and deal with it. At Tennessee, you don't have to deal with that. So for me, Tennessee did the right thing. I don't love how all the PR stuff behind the scenes. I'm not a big fan of all the drama. But Tennessee made the right call not giving Nico's camp what they want. You cannot let your quarterback's dad determine what you're going to do offensively just because T.J. Houshmandzadeh and a guy that got ran out of the recruiting game at Florida decided that's what needs to happen.
Will White, Sports Animal in Knoxville, fantastic work, my man. The check's in the mail.
Hey, I appreciate that. I think that's what Tennessee told Nico, too.
Hey, Will, thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate it.
I'll see you later.
All right, see ya. Halftime show, Terry Ford, David Ayer on the game. All right, Firehouse sub text of the hour, 803-404-6100. Man, Will White was great. Bring him on every day to talk about this Nico topic. Yeah, Will White was fantastic just now from the Sports Animal in Knoxville. Talking about this Nico thing. And again, we get what we get by, reading reports and seeing what insiders say and things of that nature. We're not boots on the ground in Knoxville, Tennessee, or any of these markets that we read stuff that's going on. That's why it's cool to grab someone who is actually there, who's got sources, who can talk to people to kind of sift out information that we haven't heard, and you just got a great dose of it from Will White. That was fantastic. I didn't know that was coming. Basically, Nico is no longer a Tennessee Volunteer because his pain-in-the-butt dad was telling Josh Heupel what kind of offense to run. And look, and I agree with Will and I agree with Josh Heupel. You can't let your quarterback do that, or your quarterback's dad. What kind of credibility do you have with your players? What's next? Your James Pierce last year was edge pass rusher. What's next? If you cave into Nico's dad about running the offense for Nico, James Pierce's dad going to walk in, hey, dude, you need to change the defense and make my kid shine. You can't open that door. You just can't. So, yeah, I agree. When Will White tells us this was not about money, this was about Camp Nico telling Josh Heupel, you got to change your offense, make it more pro-style friendly to help my son get to the league. Well, here's my thing. Will said it. I was just yapping with Wes Mitchell out in our beautiful, spacious bullpen area. Nico signed up for this offense coming out of high school. Number one. And number two, this offense has put two quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, neither one of them have tore it up in the NFL yet, and I don't think Joe Milton ever will. And Hendon Hooker, remember, was hurt. But two quarterbacks did get to the NFL from this offense. It's a very quarterback-friendly offense. Are you going to sit there and do complex, progression reads like an NFL offense? No. But it will help you shine in some other ways because the offense is so quarterback-friendly. But Nico's folks said, no, we want a more pro-style offense because that's going to get our kid in the best position to go the highest he can in the draft. My thing is, look, you're having problems running the Tennessee offense. Why am I going to give you a more complex offense to run? Where you got to make pre-snap reads and you got to go through progressions and do all these things. Hell, you couldn't do the basic stuff that Josh Heupel was asking you in Tennessee's offense, which is much more simplistic than an NFL offense. How you going to handle that, Nico? That's like me saying in my math class, I'm failing addition and subtraction. Hey, Teach, can you throw me some algebra and geometry, please? How about a little trig? Well, Terry, you can't add or subtract. Yeah. But to get me ready for my future life, I need you to give me some trig. It makes no sense. It just doesn't. And if you're Tennessee, you don't want to put up with that nonsense. Look, this world we live in now, the family members, the parents, the close uncle, the agents, the hangers-on, the entourage, the opportunistic, I don't want to be mean, the opportunistic folk who are trying to leverage this new world of athletes making money off their name, image, and likeness are basically being bought. It polarizes all of this. And even though you deal with everyone's parents in some way, shape, or form, everyone's family, everyone's circle, everyone's team, that's a cool thing now. Team Nico, Team Adair. Well, we're putting up with that next week. Team Adair. Dave's entourage, handlers, and reps will be in my office on Monday. Dave's new demands. Or he won't put up the podcast anymore.
Maybe I can talk to you about that.
No, Tennessee did the right thing, but it was just a whole different circumstance. Thanks to Will White from the Sports Animal in Knoxville. Excellent stuff from Will. Football, and more football in the 1 o'clock hour. Talk to our pal Mike Uva from Gamecock Central. The guide to the spring game. Mike wrote it, and we'll talk about it coming up at 1:15 here on the game. Okay, so I thought 115, 130, Mike Uva from Gamecock Central. Talk some Gamecock football. Mike has the spring game Bible he puts up every year. So we'll get Mike's thoughts on the spring game. Obviously, spring game tonight, 6:30 pregame, 7:30. They get it rolling. And again, our guy, postgame show co-host Elijah Campbell, will call the first play for the Black tonight. Could be the first play of the game. We'll see who gets the ball first. But Elijah Campbell with the first play for the Black. Again, we got our pregame. We've got Chris Miller from Learfield. We got Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark from Gamecock Central doing the game call. And then we'll obviously have postgame. That is tonight, starting at 6:30. Baseball game, 3:45. Pregame, 4 o'clock first pitch from Williams-Brice. Williams-Brice, listen to me. Jeez, wow. From Founders, I've lost my mind. From Founders, South Carolina and Ole Miss. You can hear that on our sister station, 98.5 WOMG. All right, so we kind of picked at the quarterback route, looked at the quarterback situation for the Garnet and the Black. Some other just interesting deals here. The Black team has Lennar Sellers, Aaron Nolan, and Cutter Woods as the quarterbacks. Raul Faison is their running back along with Jawarn Howell. I think Jawarn Howell's an interesting player. We saw some moments where you go, ooh, that guy's got some skills last year. Remember, unfortunately, he had the fumble in the bowl game, but there's ability there with Howell. So it'll be fun to watch him in the spring game tonight. And Rashul Faison, I'm sorry. We'll get first time you get to see Faison coming in from Utah State. A lot of people, the tight ends on the Black team, Jordan Dingle and Brady Hunt. A lot of people think Jordan Dingle could be more of a piece in the passing game than he was at Kentucky. We shall see. Tight ends for the Garnet team include Maurice Brown, really as the guy of anybody that has, gotten any reps or run. Mostly Brown has played special teams in South Carolina, but he has lined up a tight end. And wide receiver group for the Black team, Mazeo Bennett, Jared Brown, then, and Dre Jacobs. We forget he's even on the team anymore. Those are three of the vets returning, and then you get Lex Cyrus, the freshman, and Brian Rowe, also the freshman, on the Black team. Garnet team's offensive receivers, you'll see Malik Clark, the freshman, Jordan Gidron also, and Jaden Sellers, the other freshman. Nick Harbor is on the Garnet squad as well. Wide receivers are going to be fun to watch in this game. Not so much the returnees because, obviously you want everybody to take a step forward like Harbor, Bennett. You like to see Jared Brown healthy this year. But the freshmen, there are a bunch of freshmen on this team at wide receiver that, the coaching staff is hoping will show enough to where then they get into the portal. I would think they'd want to go get a veteran receiver in the portal for no other reason but depth. You're not going to find a superstar at this point in the portal, but if you can find a guy who has been productive somewhat and is a veteran, then that would be nice to add to all your young receivers. Because those guys, again, as much ability as they have, obviously they're unproven. But, you're hoping Nick Harbor, since he's just concentrating on football this year, will really, really, really take a step forward. It'd be nice to see Jared Brown stay healthy. Again, we've talked about this. Jared Brown got hurt last year multiple times. Also, Brown, was playing out of position as a boundary wide receiver when Brown played the slot like 93% of the time at Coastal. Mazeo Bennett has been playing the slot at South Carolina. And you hope Mazeo Bennett takes a step forward. Mazeo Bennett had some really nice moments as a freshman last year. Can he have more moments as a sophomore? So we'll see. But the wide receiver group will be it'll be interesting to watch those guys. All right, Shane Beamer talking to the media, or really just talking to Carolina Calls last night with Todd Ellis. Here's Shane. Let's get cut one, Dave, from Shane about goals for the spring and the new faces. There are a lot of new faces on this roster.
But no, those are certainly the goals when you go into the spring and feel like those certainly are things that we accomplished and did. For me, there's just a lot of new faces. And for all that we bring back off of last year's team, there's so many that are so many brand new people that weren't even here last year. How quickly can we, get them acclimated? And we were able to do that and feel like we've gotten better since day one of spring practice to now. And then certainly we lost a ton of leadership off of last year's team, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And they're all gone. I kidded, I think, with the media. When we went out there for our first day of spring practice, Todd, that was the first time that since I've been the head coach at South Carolina that O'Donnell Fortune, Tonka Hemingway, Boogie Huntley, Bam Scott, Debo Williams, Kai Kroger, Hunter Rogers, Alex Herrera, Vershawn Lee, all these guys were not out there with us. They've been a part of every practice since I've been the head coach of the Gamecocks, and that was new, but it gives other guys an opportunity, and that's what's fun about coaching. And we've seen some leadership step up, and we'll need them to continue to throughout the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different vibe, man. And this is a team, a lot's expected of South Carolina in 2025. And we'll see where they settle as the rankings come out preseason, but the way too early top 25 have the Gamecocks all sitting in the top 15 pretty much, top 20 definitely. And it's because of Lenore Sellers and Dylan Stewart. Now, that's great. Showed you a lot of playmaking potential, right, as a runner and a thrower. And you got a guy coming off the edge that looks like if he keeps improving, Dylan Stewart, he'll be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. But you also lost 37, Jalen Kilgore, DQ Smith, and Judge Collier. That's it. That's all. That's a lot of people to replace and a lot of leadership and a lot of production. On offense, it's a couple of your best gunners on special teams. That's all. That's all you're replacing. But you're expected to be one of the better teams in the SEC. This is all going to be all about development and guys stepping up in bigger roles. Can they do it? And you're hoping some of these freshmen pop, especially a wide receiver. That would be great. Maybe a couple of guys on defense as freshmen will come in and make some things happen. And your transfer portal, hopefully you'll get a few in the transfer portal that can play as well as Kyle Kennard and Demetrius Knight and Torricelli Simpkins and Rocket Sanders. We'll see. There's a lot of stuff going on. That's the other thing about the spring game. You're going to get to see a lot of people play in some way, shape, or form, and guys that are going to be quite vital to the success of this football team coming up. All right, let's get back to Shane there, David Ayer. Let's snag, we'll talk about the freshman wide receivers. Let's get cut 4, talking about those first-year wide receivers. Cut 4, Dave. Very,
very well. Thank you for the question, first of all. Thanks for coming out.
5 of them, Coach.
Yeah, 5 of them. And Donovan Murph, who is not here with us right now because he's still finishing up high school at Irmo. He's pretty much at every practice and every event we have that on his own. We're excited about him as well. That's a very talented group, very hardworking. We're excited. Yeah, no disappointment at all about that group. They've done a good job, and they're great young men. I mean, not only are they doing well on the football field, but they're doing well in the classroom. From right here in Columbia, Jordan Gidron from right here in Columbia at Ridgeview High. He's got all A's right now and doing great in the classroom, and all those guys are. And that's not easy coming into a program in January and going through spring practice. But they've handled it well. They'll be so much better for it now. But they'll make a difference in our offense this year to go along with the returning receivers that we have also.
So, yeah, I mean, the hope is one or two of these receivers can step up and help out this year, these freshmen. And we'll see. But a lot of talent, a lot of ability. You got 4 stars pretty much across the board. Jaden Sellers is a 3-star, but a lot of people really like Sellers' ability, and he kind of knows the quarterback, too. That might help. Might help a little synergy since he kind of knows that guy a little bit. So the wide receiver room will be interesting. Can Nick Harbor improve a lot since he's just focusing on football this year? Can Jared Brown stay healthy? And now that he's had 1 year playing out wide, can he adjust more to that different role? And Mazeo Bennett, he had a nice freshman year. Can he build on that? So we'll see where it goes. We will see. And remember, last year, Josh Simon and Rocket Sanders became the 2 security blankets for Lenore Sellers in the passing game. Both are gone. Who can step up? Who can help out? And if you're talking about tight end, Michael Smith is out this spring. They're nursing an injury with Smith. But can Jordan Dingle transfer in from Kentucky? Can he become a factor? Brady Hunt was hurt last year a bit and was kind of stuck in a depth numbers game. But Brady Hunt was productive catching passes before he got to South Carolina. So we'll see. And as with the running backs, Oscar Attaway looks like he's kind of a guy that can help out in the passing game. We'll see what Faison can do in a different offense in the SEC, catching the football. So all this stuff, again, look, the spring game tonight isn't going to give you a ton of answers about anything, but at least you can see a lot of these guys run around the football field and play football for the first time. And hopefully you see something you go, wow, that was great. Hopefully they build on that. Because you know what's going to happen. This is just human nature. You watch a spring game, a guy makes some plays. Oh, that dude. What's his number? What's his name? That guy's going to be he's going to be a player. He's going to have a statue. And then he never plays. Just the way it goes. Just like preseason football in the NFL. When I've worked in NFL markets, we always call him Mr. August. Some guy goes out there in preseason and training camp and practices, and guy looks like a Hall of Famer. And then you put him in real games, and before you know it, you get your phone and you look on the team app and you go, "Wow, they released that guy, huh?" So that's just the way this thing rolls. But it'll be fun just, again, to watch some of these new faces, some of these other players who last year were maybe second or third stringers who need to step up, and just kind of watch them run around the field and play. A lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. We'll continue to pick at the South Carolina spring game roster, give you some updates there. And also, Will White brought up something very interesting about Tennessee and a quarterback they were chasing. It didn't work. We'll circle back to that story, too, as we yap nothing but football in the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Halftime show. Terry Ford, David Dare on the game. All righty. We are yapping a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour. Sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Terry Ford Gledge going to be hanging David Ayer on the buttons. Jay Phillips at the Heritage. He will be on as he walks the course today. Tyler Head's gone today, but Elijah Campbell is here to co-host with Jay, like always, on the post-game show. Elijah calling the first black play in the Garnet and Black game. We'll talk more about that later. All that's coming up here on the game, though. All right, so. Yes. All right, so we heard Will White bring up the whole deal with Tennessee chasing or going after Josh Hoover, the starting quarterback at TCU. But get this. So the Volunteers, according to sources, I'm looking at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram right now. Tennessee offered Hoover roughly $1 million more than he's currently making at TCU, but Hoover, according to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, quickly turned down the offer and decided to remain in Fort Worth. Hoover already has a 7-figure salary at TCU, and he would have got $1 million more to go to Tennessee. And he said, "Nah, I'm good," which is very interesting. But that's the skinny on this whole thing, that Hoover turned down $1 million to stay at TCU. So Tennessee's still looking for a quarterback. Will White said, in his mind, just, ride with your redshirt, your 4-star redshirt freshman. Maybe go find a veteran quarterback in the portal, but go with your 4-star redshirt freshman. You got a 5-star true freshman also in the room. And that's what Will said. And I think that's what Tennessee will end up doing, playing their redshirt freshman as a starter. Unless someone shakes out, unless Tennessee is, all of a sudden there's a real good starting quarterback that all of a sudden hit the portal and then all of a sudden puts a do not contact on his name and all of a sudden ends up at Tennessee for a heck of a lot of money. But that wouldn't be tampering at all. Now it's not, because the portal's open. And that could happen. The Josh Hoover stuff happened before the portal opened. Because, look, there's tampering everywhere. But now the portal's open, it's not tampering. But it would be interesting if all of a sudden a quarterback hit the portal, the people went, wow, didn't expect that. Then all of a sudden he's at Tennessee. But barring that, I could see the Vols just keeping it in-house. But we'll find out. But I just want to give that little Josh Hoover, that extra deal of him turning down $1 million extra from what he's making at TCU to go to Tennessee. All right, Shane Beamer talking on Carolina Calls last night with Todd Ellis. Freshmen are important on this football team. We just talked about the freshman wide receivers. Now Shane goes a little farther, just talking about the freshmen in general on this roster and how they fared during the spring. That would be cut 5, David Ayer, in a minute. I want to get that. But first, before we get to that, it's time to get an injury update from Shane. Hit it.
Time now for the Samuels Reynolds Law Firm Injury Report. When you're hurt at work or in an accident, Samuels Reynolds goes to work for you. The Samuels Reynolds Law Firm. True injuries, true lawyers. 779-4000.
All right, let's get cut 3 here, Dave. Shane Beamer giving us the injury report so far in the spring.
Yeah, Caleb Williams, the defensive lineman that's new here, just graduated high school. He didn't do anything this spring. He'll be available this season, Todd, but it'll be very late in the summer before he really gets going. So I don't know how realistic it is. I hope he can get back, but a defensive lineman that isn't really cleared until the end of the summer, that'll be tough to say be ready for day one. And then Ryan Brubaker, who's an offensive lineman for us and has been around our program for a couple years and good solid player. He's a guy that, I would say is very unlikely to be able to do anything this upcoming season.
There you go, Ryan Brubaker, Caleb Williams. Added to the list, Michael Smith, of course, not playing in the spring. They're holding out Smith, the tight end, the sophomore tight end, so he can get healthy for summer. We know about Jalen Brown, the edge transfer from Missouri, is out the rest of the spring as well. Best thing about the spring game, you don't want anybody to get hurt. That's the number one thing in the spring game, obviously, and for Elijah Campbell to call a play that either crushes it or is a complete disaster. We need extremes on either side for our entertainment value. We just do. Walking the course at the Heritage. We have found him. Jay Phillips, what's up, bub?
It's a good day. A little more blustery today than yesterday, but a lot of fun. Much bigger crowd. And I saw the Gunner. Is that his name? Is it Johnny?
Johnny Gunner.
Bobby Gunner?
Johnny Gunner.
I don't know.
By the way, wouldn't that be a better radio name than Bill Gunner? Hey, I'm Johnny Gunner. Johnny Gunner playing the hits.
It does. That's it. Well, it's got a nice FM rock sound.
Yeah, it
to
does.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill
But
Gunner.
got to see Mr. Gunner this morning for a few minutes and hang out. We were watching Justin Rose and a few others come through, and boy, newsflash: Justin Rose really popular. Lots of people around him. I am not going to be able to see Scotty Scheffler tee off with Victor Hovland. They're getting ready to. I watched them for a good bit yesterday. I think I told you guys. I know I told Elijah. Huge gallery, obviously. Around Scotty, and I know it'll be the same. I've been following mostly today. I had a really good time. They didn't play great. Maybe it was me, but the Jason Day Tony Finau pairing was a lot of fun. So got to see them a bunch. Watched Ludwig Oberg for a bit. I'm become a real big fan of that kid. And, again, second at the Masters last year. I think, tied for fifth this year? Am I right about that? Somewhere close.
Remember, he was in contention until he totally soiled himself on the back nine Sunday.
Yeah, well, everybody did, didn't they? Let's face it, for Justin Rose. Justin Rose is the one who had the great finish, and then Rory just got it done, which I'm happy about, and I felt badly for Justin. But, yeah, Oberg was right there. He's going to win the Masters one day. I'm convinced of that. But, no, it's been a good day, and I'm actually inside for just a second to call you guys, and then I'm going to head back out, and I'm doing something with Elijah a couple of times during the afternoon show. But good day for golf, and we'll see if Justin Thomas holds on to it. They're not going to be shooting 10 under and 7 under and 6 under today, man, not the way the wind's been. Although it died down a little bit, Terry, but the scores today are not where they were yesterday.
Yeah, I'll leave you with this. Do you think Tony Finau's career has now gone sideways because Elijah has come out saying how much he loves Finau?
Well, I don't know if that's it. I won't say it's not. But Elijah did ask me to gather some video of Mr. Finau, so I have done that. They just finished about 5 minutes ago on 18. He had a decent little putt for birdie and missed it by about 2 feet. So I think he's an even par for the round. So not great so far for him. But I don't want to fully blame Coach Elijah Campbell.
That's right, Coach Campbell.
That's right. So,
by the way,
we'll see. I'll have more. But there's some good pairings in the afternoon. So, but again, Scotty and Hovland, I think they just teed off. I think their tee time was 1:25. So
all right.
They'll be out on the course in the late afternoon, so I'll be following those guys.
I appreciate you giving us a little update there, boss, and you'll be talking to Elijah after 3. Thank you, man.
Yes, sir. All right, y'all have fun.
All right, Jay Phillips from the Heritage. He's kind of hanging around, giving us reports all week, covering it for us here on the game. Mike Uva, Gamecock Central. We'll get his thoughts on the spring game and on the Gamecocks in general. He's engaged now, I've heard. Maybe he's a different guy. Maybe he's a new man. We'll see what he sounds like now that he's engaged. I haven't talked to him since he's been engaged officially. I wasn't here the other day. I was gone. So we'll see. We'll see what Mike Uva's like now that, he's an engaged man. That's next, right here on the Halftime Show. Lots of football, the 1 o'clock hour, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors on the game. What we're talking about, obviously, is a lot of football in the 1 o'clock hour, like always, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Talking Gamecock spring game tonight. Garnet and Black. Elijah Campbell will call the first play for the Black. We'll see how that goes. Our buddy Mike Uva, Gamecock Central, get him in here. All right, before we get to all this football stuff, I realized something. This is my first time I've talked to you since you got engaged. How you doing? You hanging in there?
You know what? I thought, okay, we give her the ring, and then I'm going to be able to breathe a little bit. But no, it goes right from the ring to, all right, we got to worry about the wedding planning. And, it's just nonstop. And I'm sure right after this, we'll talk about kids. So it was funny. I was talking to her dad about that. And I said, does it ever end? And he kind of just smiled at me and said, nope. So, all jokes aside, it's been awesome. Very grateful. She's an awesome girl. Shout out to Tyler Head, having her on last week, which was really neat. Made her feel like a superstar. So it's been really neat, Terry, excuse me, to be able to experience this.
Well, I mean, I figure she's going to make you a better human being because God knows you needed it.
Well, then again, the bar's set very low for that. So.
No, seriously, bud, congratulations. It was very cool, the video. Shane, all the things you did. Obviously, her saying yes was vital. But, dude, seriously, I'm happy for you. Congrats, pal.
No, I appreciate it.
All right, so we get to this spring game. You put out kind of like your thoughts, rules, whatever about a spring game on Gamecock Central. And out of those, what's the number one thing that if you could only tell someone one rule or one thought from the spring game, it would be what?
One rule. I would say not to get too high or too low on a player, simply because, and granted, South Carolina didn't use, they're opting not to use all 15 practices. They're using 13, and then the spring game will act as the 14th practice. We don't see everything. We don't see what took place for those other 13 practices. And sometimes when you go into a game, and I've seen this in years past, a player will go off. And, they might go against, the first team, but sometimes it's against the second team defense, third team defense. Sometimes it's a mixed bag. Certainly with how they've done it the last couple of years, you have the draft, so you have more of a mixed bag than anything else. And you have some fans that will walk away and they'll say, hey, man, that guy should be starting. I remember that with Jason Brown a couple of years ago. And don't get me wrong, what Jason Brown did and what he did against Florida, that will be remembered in Gamecock lore for many, many years to come. But it's just pump the brakes. And then if a player goes out there, and whether it be from a statistical standpoint, if they're an offensive player and their stats aren't popping, or defensively, maybe they gave up a big catch or whatever the case may be, don't look at it and be like, man, we are, we're screwed in that position. Because, again, the spring game does not tell the full story.
Mike Uva hanging out with us from Gamecock Central, talking some Gamecock football. Right now we're focused on the spring game. So, and it isn't the end-all, be-all. But once we get out of the spring practices, and obviously the portal is open, there's already been some talk of South Carolina, having some negotiations or conversations with some players. If I said there's one position they got to fortify in the portal, in your mind, going into summer, which one would you pick?
It's tough. It's tough because we can look at multiple positions and say, for one reason or another, that I'd like to see them add a piece because maybe I want to see more competition for the starting role, or I want to see just more depth. Certainly when you look at what South Carolina was able to accomplish last year at the edge position with Kyle Kennard coming in, you wonder if you'll be able to get some type of production that will be able to compete with that in some shape, way, or form, because Dylan Stewart, you would hope that he's going to be able to take that next step going from a freshman to a sophomore. Brian Thomas Jr., who I've been pounding the drum on. Here's a guy that had a phenomenal season last year as the number 3 edge, had over 4.5 sacks, and he's a guy that is looking to be that starter across from Dylan. South Carolina, do they go into the portal and look for an edge? Certainly there's been some speculation that there's a player in the other Carolinas, in North Carolina, that USC could be pursuing. On top of that, you look at the defensive tackle room. There's been some great reports this spring about what Gabe Brownlow Dindy has been able to do. Do you continue to look at that position as that's certainly a position that South Carolina needs to replace a lot of production because you're losing over 1,500 snaps from a year ago? Do you look at a wide receiver who could bring in some veteran presence to go along with the talent that they have, especially with the young guys? So I think those positions in particular are the ones that jump out to me. But it's certainly going to be something that I'm interested to see what South Carolina ultimately decides to do, because at the end of the day, as Shane Beamer has mentioned many times before, not just competition being the core value of their program, but they're not just going to bring guys in for the sake of it. They have to be a good fit for the program.
Mike Uva hanging out with us, Gamecock Central, yapping some Carolina football, especially the spring game here on the halftime show on the game. All right, so the backup quarterback it's kind of interesting. And, again, there's no things you get from a spring game like in totality, but for you, are you going to zero in a little bit and look at an Aaron Nolan and a Cutter Woods and see if Dante Reno, how different he might look in his second spring game? How much are you going to pay attention to the backup quarterback situation, or you're like, that's not going to figure itself out till summer?
I mean, that's going to be one of those things that will certainly play out throughout fall camp. I think the big thing for me, and I think it's interesting when I listen to different fans of what they're looking for me, especially at the quarterback position, because the offensive line, again, it's a mixed bag, right? You have the draft of how they do it, which I think is really neat, brings some excitement from a player's standpoint, no question about it. But I look back to last year. Robbie Ashford, he only threw the ball one time, and the reason why was because an injury took place right before the game to one of their offensive linemen with Anderson. So Marquis Anderson went down. I think his back tightened up. So because of that, the black team early on, they weren't able to throw the football at all. I think the only throw that Robbie made was he was 1 for 1 in the stat sheet, a 14-yard completion. So I bring that up because I think, again, there's no question that a lot of people want to see what Aaron Nolan is going to be able to do. Cutter Woods, Dante Reno, he's put together some good spring practices to go along with the second scrimmage last week. He had a 14, 15-play drive that led them down the field for a touchdown. So you need to be able to see what you can get out of that room. But I think for me, when I look at a spring game, especially the quarterback position, I want to see how a player, number one, is smart with the football. But number two, if they do make a mistake or if the pass was a little high, how do they respond? And I think that tonight, if I'm going into it and I'm judging these three quarterbacks, throw Luke Doty out there as well. We'll hopefully see him at QB a little bit. I want to see that more than anything.
Mike Uva hanging out with us, yapping some Carolina football spring game stuff here on the halftime show on the game. All right, I was talking to Preston Thorne, who I heard used to play football at South Carolina. That's what I've been told. And Preston says one of the things in a spring game, because there's not so much you can glean from a spring game, but he likes to watch the line of scrimmage just to see how these guys compete on the line of scrimmage. There's not a lot of continuity. Again, the draft splits up the offensive linemen, but just to see how they do, whether it's one-on-one situations, just how they handle their business at the line of scrimmage, he watches that. How much of that are you going to pay attention to? Because you got to replace three starters on the offensive line, and you're replacing pretty much the entire defensive front except for Dylan Stewart.
Well, maybe this is going to sound like an excuse, and I'm sure a lot of former offensive linemen who'd be listening to this, they will not make this excuse or say what I'm going to say, but it's tough. It's tough when you don't have the guys that you've been playing along. And I get it. South Carolina, they've been doing a great job of mixing guys in here and there and trying to figure out, okay, what's the best unit to go out there? Because it's not just who's the best individual. It's who plays the best as a unit, and that rapport is 5. So I think the challenging part is that there will be some players who have not had as many snaps, as many reps next to each other, simply because of, again, you get a mixed bag out there. So I think that is going to be a little bit of a challenge. But at the same time, too, to Preston's point, to what you just brought up, your one-on-ones. You know, if there is a situation where South Carolina is running the football and they're going downhill, especially if they're doing some man scheme from a blocking standpoint, win your one-on-one. Hold on to your block. All those little things where it's like, all right, well, the relationship and not knowing exactly how the guy next to you plays because you haven't had as many reps in the spring. That stuff goes out the window when you run the football and you're just getting into the basics of it. Can you sustain a block? Can you make sure that you're doing the little things right so that you're putting good tape out there? I've been around some programs, and not just as a player, but going back into different areas that I've covered. There's some teams that will not even watch the spring game whatsoever. The coaching staff, they don't break it down. There are some teams that look at the tape on it, and they want to be able to see how guys respond. So, again, there's something to be said about that because you want to see guys compete. But again, going back to the initial point that I brought up earlier, there's not going to be always a clear indication of how guys are performing because of, and again, an example like this, these offensive linemen, they have not played every snap with each other this spring.
You know, you're a different guy now that you're engaged. More succinct, more to the point, more a bevy of information and opinion. This is good for you. You should have got engaged a long time ago.
Well, I'll tell you this, what I'm not looking forward to. I say looking forward to because of my circumstance, because I'm up in Rhode Island. I feel like I'm going to be like in the 1920s tonight around my radio, watching the game, listening to our guys, Chris Clark and Wes Mitchell, doing color commentary tonight. So for anyone out there, because it feels like there's some people I want to be nice. I don't want to say they've been living under a rock. Maybe they just have missed the information that the game won't be televised tonight. Mm-hmm. I will be right there with you. And it's going to be for my first time other than the COVID year that I haven't been in attendance for a spring game. So we will all be hovered around the radio, and we can all, critique Chris and Wes on Monday, and that will be fun.
Hey, seriously, man. Always good hanging with you, brother. We'll bother you again soon, okay?
I appreciate it as always.
All right, see you, man. Mike Uva, Gamecock Central, talking some spring game football there. And again, tonight, we start our coverage with our pregame show at 6:30, 7:30. We will get rolling. Chris Miller will do the play-by-play from Learfield for us. The analyzing of the game, Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell from Gamecock Central. Then we'll get back to the post-game show festivities after the game is over. That's our spring game coverage. The only place that you're going to get any kind of live broadcast of the spring game is right here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia. Tonight, no TV. No one else is carrying it but us. All right, Firehouse Sub Text the Hour, Radio 340-6100 coming up next here on the Halftime Show. David Dare, Terry Ford, till 3 on the game. All right, Firehouse Sub text the hour, 803-404-6100. We're going to throw in an extra one. And I got, first of all, we'll hit the one about Mike Yuva. Texter, tell Yuva it's all downhill from here. Oh, man. It's all downhill from here. All right. Also, we had talked Carolina baseball earlier in the show. And Brandon Stone was phenomenal. We'll get to that again, top of the hour, 2 o'clock, the complete game. First complete game since, 2021. And only threw 86 pitches, 65 for strikes. You want to talk about a clinic of command and strike throwing. And we always say this, there's strikes and there's quality strikes. Brandon Stone threw a lot of quality strikes. And also playing the Ole Miss aggressiveness against them last night. And here's a texter. Stone was throwing strikes. Ole Miss was swinging early. They only squared up on the 2, which were the home runs, which explains 9 innings and 86 pitches. I expect Ole Miss to show more plate patience today. Go Cox. Yeah. I mean, I could see, look, some guys are just more aggressive by nature, and some teams, their philosophy is more aggressive by nature, and some teams will look at a pitcher and say, we got to get after that dude early. Let's get him early in the count. We've scouted him, and he tries to get ahead of the count early. So while he's trying to get ahead of the count, if you get a pitch in the zone, hunt it and do damage. I could see that being a game plan. But whatever went on last night, yes, Ole Miss was aggressive, but they couldn't get Stone, to his credit. It's a really good day. Phenomenal day or evening for Brandon Stone. And right now I'm looking at it. Ole Miss offensively sits near the bottom of the SEC. Or middle of the SEC. In batting average, are sitting around in the middle. If you look at what they do regarding drawing walks, let's see here. How aggressive are they in general? Yeah, they don't. Let's see. They've been hit by 61 pitches. And they have walked 239 times this year. That's a lot. Matter of fact, that leads the SEC. So the fact they were aggressive early in the count against Brandon Stone, and the fact they didn't walk at all last night, first, that's a tribute to Stone throwing quality strikes and staying in the zone and not getting behind a lot of hitters. And two, Ole Miss being aggressive. So I could see them being more patient, to the texter's point. Appreciate the text, like always, 803-404-6100. Before we get out of football in the 1 o'clock hour, we've been doing the scouting profiles for South Carolina players that will be in the draft. It will probably go in the first 4 rounds. We did Nicky Manwari. We did our boy Knight. We did Sanders. And we haven't done Kyle Kennard yet. So it's now time to jump into Kyle Kennard. Kennard has kind of lost a little bit of shine in this draft process. It's interesting. He was looked at one point during the season, maybe a possible late first-round guy. Now he's fallen to where Dane Brugler and the folks with the Beast at The Athletic, the scouts, they think that Kennard's a 4th-round pick. I've seen him go bottom of the 3rd round. So some of the things they say about Kyle Kennard. Kennard improved his takeoff as a pass rusher last year at South Carolina to be disruptive from that wide alignment, like basically lining up wide. He can use his length in different ways to pry open blocks, but he's inconsistent as a point of attack player. Larger tackles can engulf him. Overall, Kennard has work to do in developing his counters and becoming more consistent on rundowns to reach his NFL potential, but he brings energetic speed off the edge, and he can pin his ears back. He projects as a pass rush specialist, and his role could evolve from there. That gives you the condensed version for Kyle Kennard. Basically, big tackles can dominate him. He's better with that space where he can attack off that wide edge and use his get off and his speed. He's got to work on counters when that tackle stops his first rush. He needs counters to when he engages. And against the run, he's been a hit and miss at times against the run consistency-wise. It's kind of what you got there out of the whole deal. But, again, it looks like, third, fourth round for Kyle Kennard. But if you can be a situational pass rusher in the NFL, you can have a nice career. And you can make a decent living. So we'll see. He's got good closing burst. He's got some athleticism. He can get, stronger to be able to hold the point of attack better and to be able to deal with bigger offensive linemen. But, Kyle Kennard should be off the board, I think, no later than mid-fourth round. Could see him go mid-third round, so somewhere in that neighborhood for Kyle Kennard. All right, what's trending at 2 is a victory for the Gamecocks against Ole Miss. We will talk about that next. A really, really nice win for South Carolina to start that series with Ole Miss at Founders. That's next on the Halftime Show. What's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Here on the Halftime Show, Terry Ford, David Ayer. Now, 2:15, we are going to re-rack our Will White conversation. Will does afternoons at the Sports Animal in Knoxville, great dude. And he gave us some interesting insight on the whole Nico situation. Insight we haven't heard, by the way, which was really, really good. To me, it was so good, we need to re-rack it so you can hear it, and we'll do that at 2:15 here on the game. Obviously, we are looking at spring game tonight. Garnet and Black. In case you don't know, the quarterback situation for the Black team is Lennar Sellers, Aaron Nolan, Cutter Woods. Yeah, the Black team took all the quarterbacks pretty much. Garnet team has Dante Reno, Luke Doty, Jimmy Francis. Yes, Luke Doty will quarterback at the spring game. Running backs, the Garnet squad has Oscar Attaway and Matthew Fuller. The Black team has Rashul Faison and Jawarn Howe. Wide receivers for the Black team, Mazio Bennett, Jared Brown, Dre Jacobs. Who we got to put an eye on Dre Jacobs. Maybe not so much for the spring game, but watch him through this offseason. Remember, he was the starter beginning of last year. And remember, he had some nice moments in the spring, in the summer. And then, he got nicked up a bit, and then he started losing snaps as the year went along. But he's a guy with a lot of physical ability. Dre Jacobs is on the Black team as well. Brian Rowe Jr., the freshman. Lex Cyrus, the freshman. That's the wide receiver group for the Black team. Garnet team on offensive wide receiver, Nick Harbor, and then some of the youngins, Malik Clark, Jordan Gidron as well, and Jaden Sellers. The tight end room is really Maurice Brown is the most recognizable name for the Garnet team on offense. The Black team has both Brady Hunt and Jordan Dingle. Offensive line's been split up. For the Garnet squad, Tree, Trobaugh, also Ja'Kai Moore is with the Garnet team. Shed Surratt, Boaz Stanley, Blake Franks. Offensive line for the Black team, Marquis Anderson, Rodney Newsom Jr., transfer. Also Jatavius Shivers, who has played a lot because of Cason Henry being out. Josiah Thompson as well on the Black team. Cason Henry is not listed for either team that I can see, so Cason Henry will be sitting out the spring game. He's been sitting out, he was out the last 2 scrimmages as well, so we have to keep an eyeball on that with Cason Henry. Defensively, the Black squad, they have defensive line, Nick Barrett and Javion Hardy. We want to keep our eye on both those guys. Nick Barrett basically redshirted last year, so he could be part of the rotation this year at the interior of the defensive line. Xavier Hardy, a lot is being expected at some point of the JUCO transfer coming in this year. Black team at the edge has JT Gear and Brian Thomas, 2 guys who are competing for a lot more run at the edge spot. Brian Thomas, Mike, you've brought up Brian Thomas. Heard some good stuff about him in spring practice. 4.5 sacks last year. The thought is he'll be a guy that will get every opportunity to be next man up. And as a JT Gear, who just hasn't been healthy. JT Gear, if my memory serves me, which it doesn't anymore, Gear had 5.5 sacks his last year at Syracuse. He just can't stay healthy. Some of the names at linebacker, A.J. Holloway, Fred Johnson for the Black team, Justin Okoronkwo, also in that mix at linebacker, Brandon Cisse, Judge Collier at corner, along with Zabari Sandy, who's been hurt a ton. Jaquel Hallman, also in that mix. David Busey, Kelvin Hunter, Peyton Williams, the safeties for the Black team. Defensively for the Garnet squad, Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, who we've heard a lot about on the defensive line. Monkel Goodwine, who is expected to step up this year with more reps. And Devontae Miles, who we don't talk about at all, coming through the portal. So those 3 will be on the interior of the defensive line. The edge will have Dylan Stewart, Desu. Umeozulu, we've stopped hearing about him. There's a lot of potential for Desu when he first came in, and you're hoping at some point that potential gets hit. And Anthony Addison, who a lot of people have talked about, the freshman. And like I said, Dylan Stewart also off the edge for the Garnet squad, as long as Stewart gets reps. So Addison and Desu are going to get a lot of run for the Garnet team tonight because I don't see Dylan Stewart playing a whole bunch. Linebacker, Donovan Darden, another freshman everyone likes a lot. Sean Murphy coming through the portal. Heard a lot of good things about him. And another guy we don't even speak of. Jerron Willis. Willis, 2 years ago, was part of that defense in November that started to turn this thing for South Carolina. They started to get more pass rush. Bam Martin, Scott, and Willis together were getting more heat on quarterbacks. Willis didn't get a whole lot of run last year because, again, it was a crowded defense. Willis is going to get his chances this year. We'll see how that goes for him. But Sean Murphy off the transfer portal, a lot of positive, as Donovan Darden, the freshman. Corner, defensive backs, I should say. Gerald Kilgore, Buddy Mack III, DQ Smith, Jackson Berger for the Garnet team. So not a lot of experience in that back end when it comes to defensive backs for the Garnet squad. Mason Love's going to kick and punt for the Garnet. The black team, their specialist, Peyton Argent, will kick and William Joyce will punt. So that's kind of the rundown of the lineup for the Garnet and Black game for tonight. What's trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. A really nice victory, baseball-wise, for South Carolina, 3-2 over Ole Miss. Excellent win. Brandon Stone goes the distance. First complete game since 2021. Only throws like 86 pitches, 61 for strikes. The 2 Ole Miss runs were both on homers. Defense helped in the ninth inning with a double play. Those last few innings, which have been a huge problem for South Carolina, Stone navigated very well. And it's very interesting, in a one-run game, Paul Mainieri did not go to the pen. Did not go to the pen. And I think we didn't really get into this in the noon hour when we were riffing about this game. But it's telling that Paul Mainieri just stayed with Brandon Stone. One, I like the idea that Mainieri went with his gut. Stone was pitching really well. And so I think Mainieri probably went in the late innings and said, the minute Stone sniffs trouble, we'll get him out. It looks like he's tiring. It looks like now he's missing with his command and location. Maybe his velocity, which isn't great to begin with, fell off because he was getting tired. You look for the signs, right? But Stone kept rolling. Also, though, let's just be honest, Paul Mainieri probably doesn't have a whole lot of confidence in the back end of his bullpen right now, the high-leverage guys. There's not been consistency. Let's just be real. So if you're Mainieri, Stone's going, and you're just like, you know what? Let's just keep going. We'll get some guys up in the bullpen in case we need them, but let's ride with Brandon Stone. And Stone just did really nice work. Excellent work. Offensively, South Carolina, they picked at it. Wasn't like they had one of those booming offensive games. 3 runs scored, kind of scraped along to get your runs. Jordan Carrion grounded out to score a run, a lot of small ball. Braylon, the catcher, infield hit to shortstop that scored Hollins. And Nathan Hall singled through the left side, and Scobie scored. So again, a lot of small ball last night for South Carolina. Only 6 hits and 1 walk, only 7 base runners last night for South Carolina. But the Gamecocks got it done. They grinded out 3 runs. Stone was phenomenal, and they get the win. All right, let's grab a little Paul Mainieri here, David Ayer, real quick. And we'll get cut 13 first, the scratching of those runs. Here's Paul Mainieri talking about the performance of the offense last night.
Well, to be honest with you, I was surprised seeing him in person because I remember watching him a couple years ago. He was a hard thrower. I mean, he was throwing 94, 95. It seemed like it, at least when I would watch the games. But, he had an arm surgery, and he just has a different style of pitching now. He was topping out at 90, but he was throwing a really, really good changeup. And we had a tough time adjusting to his changeup. But Carrion swung through 2, but then with 2 strikes on him, put the ball in play and allowed the run to score. And that was, I didn't think we'd win 1-0, but I was just happy to see us get a lead and, feel good about the early part of the game. And then, Nathan came through with a big hit, and then the young kid, Gavin Braylon, came through with a clutch 2-strike hit. And, we were able to, score 3 runs. We had a chance to kind of break it open there. Carry-on was up with second and third, but we just couldn't get a hit right there. Kept the game close, and then Mitch Sanford hit the home run to make it a 1-run game. Mitch, I love Mitch. He played for me for 2 years at LSU. I don't know if you all know that. But my last 2 years at LSU, he played for me, and I love the kid. Recruited him and everything. I wasn't very happy about him hitting that home run tonight, to be honest with you. I hope that's the last one I see out of him this weekend. But I got to tell you, when they brought that Morris kid in, wow, that kid was awesome. I mean, he wasn't just a hard thrower. He had a great curveball cutter. I mean, he threw all strikes. Who hits that guy? I mean, he pretty much dominated us, once he came into the game.
Just Paul Mainieri talking about just scratching for runs. That's what you did last night. We went over it. I mean, Nathan Hall had a couple of knocks, but that was really it. I mean, it's first 4 guys in the order. Henry Kazmar had a hit. Carry-on knocked in a run, but was 0 for 4. Ethan Petrie also went 0 for 4. I mean, you even throw in Evan Stone, the DH, went 0 for 2. So, again, the top 5 guys in the order only had 3 hits. But South Carolina found a way, and that's just what you do. And South Carolina's lost games where they've had leads late. They've lost a bunch of close games. Last night, give the Gamecocks credit. Brandon Stone, phenomenal. And the Gamecocks find a way to grind out a W. All right, Will White from the Sports Animal was on with us in the 12 o'clock hour, gave us some great information about the Nico situation. Basically saying a lot of the stuff you've heard, don't believe it. We got that next. What's Trending at 2, sponsored by Traditions Fine Jewelry and Gamecock Traditions. Will White from the Sports Animal in Knoxville. We'll re-rack that conversation from the noon hour next here on the Halftime Show. Terry Ford, David Dare on the game. All right, hey, we got it going on. What's trending at 2? What's trending at 2 is we're re-racking our interview with Will White from the Sports Animal in Knoxville, talking about the Nico situation, a unique perspective. We wanted you to hear it in case you missed it. Here's my little conversation with Will White from the Sports Animal in Knoxville. Hit it, Dave. Greatest day in the history of the world. Hope you enjoyed the Will White re-rack. It was interesting stuff about Nico. Greatest day in the history of the world is next here on the Halftime Show. Greatest day in the history of the world. Today is April 18th. Let's see, old school wise. On this day in 1946, Jackie Robinson debuted as a second baseman for the Montreal Royals, the farm team for the Brooklyn Dodgers. 1946. Also, the Montreal Canadiens are like, not anymore, but used to be the gold standard in the NHL. They won their fourth consecutive Stanley Cup on this day in 1959, taking out the Toronto Maple Leafs in Game 5, 5-3. And one other old school, a couple old schools, because there's some good ones today. Boston's Bill Russell on this day in 1962 scored 30 points, but dig this, grabbed 40 rebounds as the Celtics beat the Lakers in overtime for their fourth straight NBA title. 1966, the same Bill Russell was named the head coach of the Boston Celtics, becoming the first African-American head coach in NBA history. 1967, Rick Barry knocked in 55 points as the San Francisco Warriors beat Philadelphia in Game 3 of the NBA Finals. Look, Rick Barry was a phenomenal player. He's just never talked about a lot because, again, he played an era before SportsCenter, and two, because, well, a lot of people don't like Rick Barry because he's very blunt. Very blunt guy. Dude will tell you what he thinks, and some people, that rubs them the wrong way. Some people think Rick Barry can be difficult. Really good. When Rick Barry was doing media, he's phenomenal because, again, he gives you his opinion. He says what he feels. It's a great interview. Rick Barry on this day, 1967, scored 55. On this day, 1991, John Stockton breaks his own NBA single-season assist record as the Jazz rout the Supersonics 131-103. Stockton, his 11 assists gave him 1,136 for the season. Stockton, a phenomenal pass-first point guard. Even though I think Magic Johnson was better as a pure passer. 1995, some dude named Joe Montana announces his retirement from the NFL. I was a huge Joe Montana fan. Love Joe Montana. He goes on to Kansas City after he came back. Remember, he was hurt, came back, played for the 49ers. They were ready to move on to Steve Young. Montana goes to Kansas City and quarterbacks the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game.
I've got a side note about this.
What do you got?
Yesterday, I took the bus home.
Yes, because that's what you do now.
I was wearing my Len Dawson T-shirt.
By the way, let me say this really quick. Dave's Len Dawson T-shirt is great. Now, Len Dawson was a quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs in the 60s and 70s. There's an iconic picture of Len Dawson sitting on a small little wooden
Steel
stool.
folding chair.
Little folding chair, rather. Smoking a heater.
And drinking a Fresca.
And by the way, he's in his gear. He's in his uniform, full uniform.
Mud and blood all over.
Old school. Missing teeth, cauliflower ear, blood everywhere. He's sitting there drinking a Fresca and sucking on a lung dart. It's to me, it's one of the greatest pictures of old NFL, right? Only thing missing, Dave, instead of a Fresca, it should have been like a Schlitz or like a Budweiser, right?
Yeah.
Because back in those days, they would drink in the locker rooms and clubhouses after games. There was beer available.
Why not?
Right, but today, because of liability, you don't want to give these guys booze and have them start driving everywhere, it stopped. But, so that's the picture Dave's talking about. Len Dawson sitting on a folding chair in his full Kansas City Chief gear with a Fresca and a cigarette. Go ahead.
So I get on the bus. There's this old guy on there with long white hair.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, Lenny Dawson, number 16. And he's loud. I mean, really loud. And then he starts going on about the entire history about Lenny Dawson. And I'm like, oh, dude, I'm just trying to sit down here.
I just think the shirt's funny. I think the picture's cool.
And then he goes, and Joe Montana, he goes to Kansas City. He wanted to wear 16, but he can't wear 16 because that's Lenny Dawson's number. And he said he didn't know who Lenny Dawson was. Now, that's a lot. And then he goes on and on about that. And I'm like, okay. All right.
And at this
Then he-
point, you're thinking, why the hell did I just bring my car?
Then
to
he
work?
starts talking about Cleveland Browns and Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm like, wow, now I'm really like uninterested in what this guy
Now he's totally the teacher from Peanuts.
Then we passed stuff on Rosewood Drive. You know, that used to be the Keg of Nails right there. Do you remember the Keg of Nails? I'm like, vaguely.
At what point did you pull down the window and jump?
Oh, as I was ready, I'm like looking where. What stop is he
I was
getting
gonna
off
say,
at? 'Cause
or I'm just taking a stop to get on a new bus.
I'll walk 5 more miles before I get off of this guy.
That's phenomenal. All because you wore your Lenny Dawson shirt.
Exactly.
Hope you learned a lesson.
I'll never wear it again.
Never again in your life. Not if you take the bus. Don't do it if you take the bus. All right, on this day in 1998, all right, so NFL draft that year, it came down to two quarterbacks being taken number one overall by the Indianapolis Colts. One was Peyton Manning, one was Ryan Leaf of Washington State, and basically the Indianapolis Colts did the right thing, and they took Tennessee quarterback Peyton Manning. There were a lot of teams, a decent amount of teams that would have taken Ryan Leaf over Peyton Manning. They'll never admit it now because Ryan Leaf was a bust for a bunch of reasons, and Peyton Manning wanted to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. 1999, on this day, April 18th, the greatest day in the history of the world, Wayne Gretzky ends his NHL career at Madison Square Garden, playing for the New York Rangers. The Rangers lose to Pittsburgh 2-1. Before the game, Gary Bettman announces that the league will retire number 99. The league retires number 99 in honor of Gretzky. On this day in 2001, LA Lakers forward AC Green plays in his 1,192nd consecutive game, which remains an NBA record. The streak began in 1986. AC Green was known for three things. A, for being an important role player in Laker championship squads. Two, this consecutive game streak. And three, the vow of celibacy he took through his NBA career. I'll leave it at that. You can look it up on the internet. There's some great articles about it. 2007, Mark Burley of the Chicago White Sox faces the minimum 27 batters in a 6-0 no-hit victory over the Texas Rangers. Burley walks Sammy Sosa with one out in the fifth and then picks Sosa off first base. In what was an awful moment for the city of Seattle, in 2008, NBA owners give approval of a potential Seattle Supersonics relocation to Oklahoma City in a vote of 28-2. Look, I get it. At the end of the day, it's on Seattle because they need to build a new arena. They weren't getting the public funding, but the league sells the team to a guy from Oklahoma City. Worst kept secret in the world is if he didn't get the arena, he was moving the team to Oklahoma City. Now, could the NBA have worked harder to keep that team in Seattle? Yes. The fan base loved the Sonics. I was there. I worked in Seattle, and I knew how much that city loved Sonics basketball. And the worst kept secret in the world was a guy from Oklahoma City buying the Supersonics. His goal was to move the Seattle franchise to Oklahoma City. At some point, Seattle will get the NBA again. But, yeah, that was some backroom stuff, man. All right, Firehouse Subtext the hour next, 803-404-6100. We'll do our handoff with our buddy Elijah Campbell, the play caller for the spring game for the Black Squad, Elijah Campbell. That's next here on the Halftime Show. David Ayer, Terry Ford for a few more minutes here on the game. Firehouse Sub text of the hour, 803-404-6100. Again, a couple of texts we've gotten over with the Will White stuff was great from the Sports Animal in Knoxville, giving us the lowdown, the real lowdown from what they're hearing about the whole thing with Nico. I won't kill the segment with this, but it was interesting, Elijah. By the way, we'll talk about Elijah Campbell's dress here in just a minute. But he basically said, everybody, that all the stuff you're reading isn't true. The real skinny he's heard is it was Nico's dad telling Josh Heupel, you got to run a pro-style offense, make my kid shine so he can get ready for the NFL. Basically, Camp Nico was telling Josh Heupel how to run the offense.
That's going to go well.
And once Heupel went, we're not doing that, then that's when the Nico ghosted them at practice because they were leaving. This wasn't Tennessee decided to move on. According to Will West, our buddy Will, Will said that it was Nico's camp that decided to move on.
Now, did they ask to change the offense in December when the year ended, or was this one of those things they just came up with?
They've been asking.
You knew it wasn't going to change.
They don't change the offense.
No, that's Josh
So
Heupel's offense.
Will is phenomenal stuff from Will.
And I guess their elixir to all that is to go to UCLA. That was like, what, 111th in
Basically,
offense?
Will said they're taking less money to go put him in they don't care. They want him in a pro-style offense because they think he'll shine, and that'll get him to the NFL to make real bags.
Good luck to you.
So Will West, our buddy from Sports Animal in Knoxville,
I know
phenomenal stuff.
The Heupel offense isn't necessarily a pro style per se, but you get a ton of freedom in that thing, and you get a lot of wide open passes that you can make. And he didn't make a lot of them.
No,
last year.
and if you can't run the simplified offense that Josh Heupel runs, you're going to run a more complex pro style offense.
This has disaster written all over it for him.
If he gets the offense he wants, it's a new offensive coordinator at UCLA. Came from the staff at Indiana. Never called a play in his life.
Oh,
Cincinnati.
boy.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
This is an interesting combination.
Mm-hmm. Go get him. So Will West from the Sports Animal in Knoxville, we appreciate it very much for jumping in today. All right. So, sir, you have your South Carolina hat on. You have your 107.5 The Game shirt on. You have your way too small coach's shorts on.
Yes. For those who are looking.
You are ready to rock and roll.
With the tall black socks on, too. I mean, this is full on, coaching.
You just
attire.
need a whistle.
Exactly. I thought about bringing one, but they might not let me into the building with it. But you never know. I thought about it. That would really complete the look.
In case anyone doesn't know, Elijah Campbell will be calling the first play for the Black tonight in the spring game.
Yeah. Oh, we got something planned.
And of course, we're going to keep that on the down low. But Shane signed off on this play last night at Backstreets.
He did.
This is going to be fun. This is going to be a play.
So it got a chuckle out of him. When I talked to him last night, it got a chuckle out of him. But I think it was one of those, this is so crazy, it just might work.
You know what? Honestly, seeing the play, I think it just might work.
I think it will. Because let's just say it's something that a lot of kids today that play defense at the high school sports level probably haven't seen.
No. There's some people.
Even at the college level, you don't see that. You don't see this in the college anymore.
This is a phenomenal pull by you. And like I've said on the air, either I want this to be a phenomenal success, like it scores a touchdown, or a phenomenal failure.
It can't just be a 5-yard game.
No, that'll be boring.
That would be. Which is why, that's my rationale here. If I'm going to have the power in my hands to call one play in a spring game, it's got to be a memorable one. So we got in the lab, and we concocted something.
This will be good. This will be good.
It's a beauty.
And it's for the Black. If it's the first play, that if I'm not mistaken, Lennar Sellers will run this play.
He will.
And it'll be like, there's no depth charts, but you're probably going to get the best guys on the field for this one.
I will say this. I was relieved when I saw Josiah Thompson's playing on the Black team. I was relieved. You need a good tackle for this. You need a good, reliable tackle for this play.
This is good, man. This is good. So, anyway, We got that going. Of course, 6:30 our pregame, 7:30, everything gets underway. You'll be on the sidelines. We're doing a little different. Traditionally, your sideline reporter, let's go down the sideline to Elijah Campbell, and you can tell us about the shoe sizes for the players and what different...
I can still find out shoe sizes. I'm not afraid to ask.
The flavor of mouth guards, the stuff that hard-hitting sideline reporters get.
That's big J journalism.
But we're going to have you, kind of do stuff on social media to open up that platform for the folks who are listening to the game. They can also get a taste of what you're seeing on the sidelines. And as much as we can show in the video world, we will. But you're also going to grab maybe some player interviews and
Absolutely.
do those through Instagram Live. So we're going to be kind of hitting all the platforms. We're just going to do a little different than the traditional sideline reporter. We might snag you a couple times for the radio broadcast. We want you to do some other things too with the beauty of StreamYard.
That's right.
And our video
shout out
channel.
StreamYard, for helping us be everywhere with this broadcast. So and honestly, listen to it if you're not near a computer or a TV. But if you have a computer or TV near you, pull us up on YouTube because that's going to be a fun experience.
All right, and of course, if that play works, you might get hired.
Who knows? We might see it in the game.
Something.
We might see it in the game at some point this next
What's
year.
coming up? You got Jay walking around the Heritage trying
That's
not to
right.
get arrested?
Yeah, we got Jay making sure he doesn't throw up on himself. We're going to talk about that big baseball win last night. They needed that in the worst way.
Very
and
nice
of course,
win.
we're going to preview the spring game.
All right, post-game show coming next. Dave, fine work, my man. We'll do it Monday.